So I want you to imagine sitting in the driver's seat of a car, right? You're going 70 miles an hour down a busy Arizona freeway.
Okay. That sounds stressful already.
Right. And the sun is glaring, traffic is just weaving all around you.
Yeah.
But, and here's the catch, your hands are completely off the steering wheel.
Oh, wow. No thanks.
Yeah, your feet are flat on the floorboard, the car's literally driving itself,
Right.
and your only job in that moment, like your entire professional existence, is to stare at the road.
Just waiting.
Exactly. You are waiting for the exact millisecond the machine decides to fail, so you can grab the wheel and save your own life. You are basically a biological emergency brake for an artificial intelligence.
That is a deeply unsettling scenario to put yourself in, but it perfectly encapsulates the tension of what we're analyzing today.
It really does.
Because you're describing the literal job description of an autonomous vehicle tester.
Yeah.
But metaphorically, you're describing the sensation of experiencing severe trauma.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to frame it.
Right. It's that feeling that your life is moving at 70 miles an hour. You have absolutely no control over the steering wheel, and you are just, waiting for the crash.
And so the question becomes, what do you do when the crash actually happens? Like, how do you rebuild the vehicle while it's still moving?
Which is almost impossible.
Right. Well, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we have a stack of sources that are going to fundamentally challenge how you view the digital systems you interact with every day.
Definitely. And even the discarded objects you walk past on the street.
Exactly. We are looking at the digital footprint, the manifestos, the project logs of an Ireland-based creative strategist and designer named Lou Riordan.
Although calling this a digital footprint is honestly almost too passive.
Yeah, it's way more intense than that.
It really is. The source material we have, this overarching project known as FizzStory EXP, it functions much more like a living, breathing exoskeleton for a human mind.
I mean, the moment you open the excerpts from FizzStory EXP, you're hit with this absolute wall of visual and textual noise.
It's a lot to take in at first glance.
It's massive. It looks like a chaotic late 90s internet art project, just completely colliding with a punk rock scene.
Yeah, there is neon text everywhere.
Images overlapping each other, aggressive capitalization that just ignores all grammatical conventions, and these deeply cryptic hashtags scattered around.
And the homepage literally warns the viewer. It explicitly says 3 words. Art, R-E-C, chaos.
Which is kind of intimidating, honestly. But the visual overwhelm is completely intentional, right?
Oh, absolutely. It presents itself as this beautifully tangled web of noise, which, if you think about it, is often exactly how a mind in the midst of upheaval feels on the inside.
That makes so much sense.
But if you look closer at the source text, the underlying architecture holding that chaos together is unbelievably rigorous, like mathematically rigorous.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is the mission here? Because for anyone listening, our goal today is to decode this perceived chaos.
Right. We need to find the method in the madness.
Exactly. Because beneath that surface aesthetic of digital punk rock, Lou Riordan has engineered this profoundly structured, highly innovative framework. And they call this concept recovery design.
Which is such a fascinating term. Recovery design is basically the synthesis of 3 seemingly incompatible worlds.
What are the 3?
So it merges the sterile, hyper-optimized frameworks of high-level user experience, or UX design, then the adaptive strategies of neurodivergent innovation.
Okay.
And finally, the raw, visceral reality of human survival.
Wow.
Yeah. Luber is taking the methodology used to design corporate ecosystems and autonomous machines and applying it to the most messy, nonlinear process imaginable.
Which is healing from trauma.
Exactly, healing from trauma.
I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you are going to see the mechanics of recovery design in your own lives. Yeah. But to even grasp how this functions, we have to look at the architect first.
We really do. We have to examine Lou Riordan's professional background.
Right. Because the timeline of Lou's career, as detailed in the LinkedIn profile and the project logs we have, it's basically the Rosetta Stone for this entire project.
You cannot understand the subversion of these systems unless you understand how deeply entrenched Lou was in building them in the first place.
Exactly. For over a decade, Lou was not an outsider making art about tech. Lou was inside the machine.
Very much so.
From 2014 to 2016, the records show Lou working in the greater New York City area. They were an experience coordinator and later a production designer for IBM's Marketing Innovation Group.
And we have to consider the scale of an entity like IBM's Marketing Innovation Group.
Right, it's massive.
The notes indicate Lou was managing the overall space and experience for an IBM studio housing over 1,000 employees and contractors.
1,000 people. That is not just like picking out ergonomic chairs for an office.
No, not at all. You are essentially designing the daily reality for a microcity.
Right. Space planning, behavioral flow, wayfinding, service design. You have to anticipate how 1,000 different human nervous systems are going to interact with a physical environment.
And over an 8 to 10-hour period every single day, you are mitigating friction.
You're optimizing human output, basically building a system designed entirely for corporate efficiency and profit.
Exactly. And then the setting shifts drastically. Between 2016 and 2017, Lou is in Tempe, Arizona, working as a UX researcher for the University of Phoenix.
So moving from physical space to cognitive space.
Precisely, turning research insights into interaction design and messaging. It is the literal science of mapping how a user thinks.
Right, like figuring out where their eyes go on a screen and how to guide them down a predetermined funnel with the least amount of resistance.
Yes, and that leads directly into the role that you brought up at the very beginning of this deep dive.
The Waymo job.
In 2018, based in Chandler, Arizona, Lou goes to work for Waymo, the autonomous driving technology company.
Birthed out of Google. And Lou's title, Autonomous Vehicle Software Tester.
The specific phrasing in the source text regarding this job description is so critical here. It states, Lou was responsible for vehicle launching, monitoring, and taking control when needed.
And reporting on the vehicle's behavior while in full autonomous mode, on surface streets and freeways.
Right. Working with dispatch and remote assistance teams to map, troubleshoot, and report real-time data.
So you have a professional who has spent years mastering the art of mapping human behavior for IBM and the University of Phoenix.
Yep.
Who is now tasked with mapping the behavior of an artificial entity attempting to navigate a chaotic physical world.
You're sitting in the driver's seat, watching the wheel turn itself, tracking the data of its successes and its failures.
Now cross-reference that timeline with a specific entry in the Fizz story source material. There's a section labeled #REC_notes/00F.
Yes. In that section, Lou explicitly states that the roots of Fizz story trace back to, quote, a period of social unrest, personal upheaval, and profound transformation during 2017 to 2018.
And it mentions scattering marks, moments, and madness across PHX and NYC, Phoenix and New York City.
The geographical and chronological overlap is identical. Phoenix and NYC, 2017 and 2018.
It's wild to think about. You have an individual whose entire professional identity is rooted in building flawless, friction-free, autonomous systems.
Right. They are professionally obligated to monitor machines for the slightest deviation from the optimal path.
And simultaneously, their own personal life, their internal ecosystem, is undergoing profound upheaval. The friction is everywhere. The autonomy is collapsing.
It's a massive contradiction.
But I have to ask, isn't that inherently dystopian? You're talking about someone applying a sterile corporate UX funnel to human grief.
I can see why it sounds that way.
I mean, UX is about optimizing users to make a company money.
Yeah.
How do you apply the mechanics of a corporate algorithm to something as chaotic and personal as trauma without completely dehumanizing the person?
That is the exact trap Lou managed to avoid. And it's why this project culminates in Lou later receiving a first-class honors degree in innovation through design thinking from University College Cork.
Oh, really? So this became formal academic research as well?
Yes. Lou did not apply the goal of corporate UX to their trauma. They extracted the mechanics of UX and inverted the goal.
Okay, break that down for me.
In corporate UX, the goal is profit and seamless compliance. In recovery design, as Lou defines it, the goal is survival and agency.
So they basically stripped the engine out of the corporate vehicle and put it into a survival craft.
Exactly. Think about what happens when a person is experiencing a severe trauma response or the cognitive overload associated with profound upheaval.
Your brain just kind of scrambles.
Right. The brain's executive function often shuts down, and executive function is essentially your cognitive filing system. It handles organizing, planning, regulating emotions.
And when that collapses, the chaos just feels infinite.
Completely. What Lou realized is that the strict, data-driven frameworks of UX research, the meticulous logging, the troubleshooting protocols, they're incredible tools for externalizing executive function.
Oh, wow. So instead of trying to force your brain to stop panicking, you build a system that can catch and categorize the panic.
Exactly. You become the UX researcher of your own collapse. The source text literally notes this shift as moving from systems built for profit to systems built for people.
That is so powerful.
You use the cold, hard structure of data logging to create a safe perimeter around the messy, bold human experience of breaking down. You contain the chaos in a grid.
So the chaos doesn't consume you. That reframing is incredible. It totally explains the visual dissonance of FizStory EXP.
You have to thoroughly understand the rules of a pristine IBM design grid in order to shatter that grid so intentionally.
Right, and shatter it in a way that it still functions as a navigational tool. And that methodology takes place in a very specific section of the FizStory ecosystem.
Yes, the section Lou calls the LLab.
Right, the LLab. The notes describe it as the theoretical engine room, the research and infrastructure.
It's the method to the madness, as the site says. If we want to understand how recovery design operates mechanically, this is where the blueprints are kept.
The notes describe the LLab as focusing on creating sustainable, inclusive spaces that help people and ideas rebuild without burning out.
But there is a really interesting paradox here.
Yeah, I noticed that too when I was reading through the source material. For a system so dedicated to preserving the messy human reality of trauma, Lou leans heavily into artificial intelligence.
The text is very transparent about this. Lou refers to the integration of tools like ChatGPT, NotebookLM, Gemini, and Loma.
And they use these very specific, almost cyberpunk terms for them. They call the AI tools DGI/SLICE and Cole_Cocoach.
Yes, the Heolayakugs.
The text describes them as silicon lab hands functioning as assistive cognition systems, helping process, reflect, map, remix, question, archive, and extend ideas in motion.
Assistive cognition systems is the key phrase there. Let's break down the acronym COLA-COGS, because it speaks directly to the mechanics of neurodivergent innovation.
Okay, what does it stand for?
While the text doesn't spell out every single letter, the context points heavily toward cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading. Explain how that works in this context.
So when you are processing trauma, your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical planning part of the brain, is constantly being hijacked.
Hijacked by what?
By the amygdala. That's the brain's threat detection center. The amygdala screams danger, and the prefrontal cortex gets flooded with cortisol.
So you literally just cannot organize your thoughts.
Exactly. You cannot map a project. Every piece of information feels equally urgent and overwhelming. Cognitive offloading is taking the logistical heavy lifting out of your biological brain.
And placing it into an external system, which is where the silicon lab hands come in.
Right. Lou's using AI not to generate ideas, but to hold the scaffolding of the ideas. If you have a chaotic, brilliant, messy realization about your own recovery, you just don't have the biological RAM to format it, tag it, cross-reference it, and store it.
So you hand that raw data to the AI, and the AI maps it, remixes it, and archives it.
Exactly. It acts as an external prefrontal cortex.
I hear that, but I'm going to push back here. Isn't there an inherent danger in handing the architecture of your emotional recovery over to a large language model?
It's a valid concern.
I mean, we are talking about silicon.
Yeah.
It has no pulse. It has no capacity for grief. Using a machine that operates on predictive text algorithms to process deeply human upheaval feels, I don't know, contradictory.
It feels like a contradiction of the site's own motto, messy, bold, human.
Exactly.
It would be a contradiction if Lou were using the AI to interpret the emotion. But the text is extremely explicit about the boundaries placed on these tools.
The kind of boundaries.
Lou refers to this approach as brutalist action design. In brutalist architecture, you don't hide the concrete scaffolding, right? You expose it for exactly what it is. Raw, functional material.
Okay, so the AI is just the raw concrete.
Yes. And the source material highlights this boundary with a literal warning sign. In the lab notes, there are large, red, prohibitive emojis placed next to 3 specific concepts regarding AI.
I remember seeing those. It says, no authors, no replacements, no Fortune 500 tellers.
That Fortune 500 tellers line is brilliant.
It really is. It's a direct shot at the corporate tech bro narrative that claims AI is this omniscient oracle that will optimize our lives and predict our futures.
And Lou fundamentally rejects that narrative. The text immediately follows those prohibitions with the core tenet of recovery design's relationship with technology.
Which is?
Human stays witness, editor, and meaning maker.
Human stays witness. That is such a powerful mechanism.
It is the defining mechanism of the entire project. The AI is forbidden from being the author of the experience. It's forbidden from replacing the human struggle.
The AI is permitted only to hold the files.
Exactly. The human being remains the sole entity capable of experiencing the friction, witnessing the pain, editing the narrative, and ultimately making meaning out of the chaos.
So if the tech industry views AI as a replacement for human labor, Lou views AI as a cognitive wheelchair.
I love that analogy.
It's a prosthetic device that supports a vulnerable mind so it can navigate a hostile environment.
That is a perfect way to put it. It is taking the multi-billion-dollar optimization tool of the Fortune 500 and aggressively repurposing it to help a single human being survive a Tuesday afternoon panic attack.
That's wild. But theory in the lab is fascinating. But a cognitive wheelchair doesn't do you any good if you never leave the house.
Right. Theory has to become practice.
Recovery design can't just be intellectualized. It has to be materialized. And this brings us to the friction point. How does this theoretical mapping look in physical reality?
This is where we move from the lab out into a section defined as play.
The transition from lab to play is the transition from internal mapping to external evidence.
The source text defines play as marking time, making stuff, experiments in evidence, and going with duff flow.
Experiments in evidence. I want to pause on that phrase.
Yeah.
Because the primary output of this play section is a highly specific artistic framework that Lou calls rate art.
And rate art is where we really see the rubber meet the road.
The site explicitly defines rate art as tag art pieces made from passing objects, temporary surfaces, packaging, scraps, and transit residue.
The entire discipline relies on the materials that society considers worthless.
And Lou categorizes the outputs of rate art into two distinct, brilliantly blunt buckets: tings and shits.
We have some incredibly vivid examples in the source logs of these. Under the category of rate art shits, there is a piece titled Rainbow Brute.
What's the material for that one?
The material listed is acrylic paint applied to field-used plastic packaging.
Oh, wow. And there's another piece called Bday Treats, which is simply permanent marker scrawled on a compostable coffee cup.
And a third called Snacky Cup, which is another marked-up plastic cup.
Look at the common denominator of those materials. Plastic packaging. A compostable cup. This is transit residue.
It's the physical detritus of modern consumption.
These are objects designed by corporate UX teams to exist for exactly 10 minutes before being thrown into a landfill.
But inside the Fizz system, these objects are intercepted before they hit the trash. And here is where the Waymo mapping background violently collides with the art.
How so?
Every single one of these tings and shits is logged into a database with the absolute precision of an autonomous vehicle tracking a pedestrian. Every object is assigned a status.
The statuses are critical to the mechanism of recovery, right?
Very much so. An object is either bubbling, which means it is in progress, or currently being held in the system.
Okay.
Or it can be shipped, meaning it is completed, released, or gifted. Or it can be dropped, which signifies it has been discarded, let go, or physically thrown away.
Okay, stop and think about the neurological mechanism happening here. You
Okay.
drink a cup of coffee, you have a moment of severe anxiety. Instead of letting the amygdala hijack your brain, you take a Sharpie, you draw on the cup, you log into your system, you title the cup,
You give it a timestamp.
you assign it a status of dropped, and then you throw it in the garbage.
What you have just done is bypass the emotional spiral by engaging the prefrontal cortex in a task of data categorization.
You have taken an invisible, overwhelming feeling, anchored it to a physical piece of trash, transformed that trash into a data point.
And then officially executed a protocol of release.
You literally turned the act of throwing away garbage into a documented psychological exorcism.
Yes, because when you are navigating what Luke calls the bottomed-out/dropout experience, your macro-level agency is often completely gone.
You can't control the housing market. You can't control social unrest.
You cannot control the physical collapse of your environment, but you can absolutely control a compostable coffee cup.
Right. You can document it. You can track its life cycle.
By elevating the mundane to the magnificent, you are rebuilding the muscle of personal agency, one scrap of transit residue at a time.
Let's ground this in the most powerful example provided in the source text. Under a log titled Rate Art Piece, there is a deep dive into an object called the BTS BYOs.
The boots are a masterclass in how an object absorbs the narrative of its user.
If you are listening to this and picturing a clean museum piece sitting on a white pedestal, throw that image completely out of your mind.
Yeah, that is not what this is.
Picture a pair of Timberland Pro buckskin work boots. Heavy, utilitarian, built for labor, but they are completely defaced.
They are covered in layers of oil paint, acrylic, and spray paint.
The leather is scuffed, creased, and worn down to the nub. They look like they have walked through a war zone.
And the log attached to them tells us exactly what kind of war zone they survived. The timeline logged for the BCSB oats is arguably the most vulnerable data point in the entire text.
The source reads, got through Amazon jobs on the New York part of the Homeless to Home to Homeland tour of 2021.
PHX to NYC to LMK.
Let that sink in. The Homeless to Homeland tour.
It continues, stating they were worn since getting got in NYC and a steady utilitarian artifact across miles and kilometers of REC in motion tagging.
Throughout the 2022 to 2025 bottomed out / dropout experience, and into the ongoing rebirth plus redesign.
Now, do you know what their current status in the system is?
Status? Bubbling for drop / ship.
So they are currently being held, but they are queued up for release.
What fascinates me is the terminology Lou uses. Utilitarian artifact. These aren't just shoes that got dirty.
No, they are a physical ledger of survival. Think about the UX mapping background again.
Right, the Waymo tracking.
Waymo tracks the physical mileage of a vehicle to understand wear and tear. Lou is tracking the physical and emotional mileage of a human body through the wear and tear of these boots.
Wow. So every layer of spray paint added to those boots over 3 years is a data point.
It is Lou saying, I survived another day in the bottomed-out experience, and I am marking the evidence on the very tools that carried me through it.
It is the ultimate proof of the phrase, human stays witness. The AI didn't walk those miles.
The corporate systems didn't walk those miles.
The human walked them, and the boots are the undeniable evidence. But Raychart doesn't just apply to things you can hold in your hand, does it?
Not at all. The scale of this methodology is incredibly elastic.
And that elasticity is the hallmark of a truly robust system. I mean, if the framework only worked on coffee cups, it would just be a coping mechanism.
Exactly. Because it scales infinitely upward and infinitely downward, it is a true architecture.
Let's look at the upward scale. We go from a pair of Timberlands to a piece logged in the text as the rat nest / art trap.
This isn't a piece of trash found on the street.
The source describes it as mixed media on a 1970s Galaxy mobile home. We're talking about a structure measuring 35 feet by 12 feet.
420 square feet of physical canvas.
The text calls it a sculpture, an interactive participatory piece, and notes its status has been bubbling since roughly 2021 in Ireland.
Consider the cognitive dissonance of treating a 35-foot home with the exact same methodological tracking as a compostable cup.
It's mind-blowing. It actually reminds me of kintsugi.
The Japanese pottery philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. The art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The philosophy is that the breakage and the repair are part of the history of the object.
Rather than something to disguise or hide away.
Right. But Lou has taken the kintsugi concept, dragged it out of the delicate tea house, and applied it to a 35-foot mobile home.
Using graffiti, structural repair, radical acceptance, and sheer human willpower.
The mobile home isn't hiding the fact that it is a rat nest. It is celebrating the survival of the structure.
And if we look at the opposite end of the spectrum, proving the downward elasticity of the system, we find an entry for something transient and totally organic.
Logged as FLWRB
Yes. The description in the system reads, Raychart, flower made with nature on earth, made by unknown, planted by Sanser.
And the story attached to it is beautiful. Gifted after sitting by the roses for a hello on the Phantom's Day.
And it is stamped into the system with absolute precision, JOIOT/ON-N, hashtag 2026-0604 at 1618.
Year, month, day, exact minute.
Now here is where the project executes one of its most brilliant subversions. In the section of Fizz Story called Work, which houses what Lou calls the Raychart auction art space, we see the language used to process these objects.
Right. Whether it is the 35-foot mobile home, the painted boots, or the flower gifted by a stranger, Lou wraps them in the heaviest, most sterile, corporate intellectual property language available.
The text explicitly uses the word transfership, complete with a trademark symbol.
Lou uses the string _ trademark $/IP to describe the protocol for moving these objects. Why?
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, why take a deeply emotional moment like receiving a flower from a stranger, or the heavy trauma embedded in the buck boots, and wrap it in the language of a corporate asset transfer? It feels like returning to the very IBM rigidity they were trying to escape.
Because a corporate asset transfer is emotionally void.
Oh, I see.
When you experience severe trauma, the memories, the pain, and even the moments of fleeting beauty can feel like heavy assets you are forced to carry.
They are sticky. They cling to your nervous system.
By cataloging a flower with a timestamp and subjecting it to transfership, Lou is doing two things. First, They are creating undeniable bureaucratic evidence that the moment of beauty actually occurred.
Which is vital for a mind that might be doubting its own reality.
Exactly. And second, they are creating a legalistic protocol for letting it go.
If your trauma is an asset, you can transfer the IP of that trauma to someone else, or just out into the ether.
You aren't just losing a memory or throwing away a boot. You are officially executing a transfer of ownership out of your internal ecosystem.
This system absorbs the weight so the human doesn't have to.
Yes. The text actually refers to this as the woo of stuff. It lists concepts like provenance, letting go, drift, and care.
So the asset is stamped, the IP is ready for transfer. Where does it go? When these physical objects, these things, have to leave the artist's hands, how do they enter the physical world?
This is where recovery design expands from a personal survival strategy into a radical social architecture. It introduces the pre-tips protocol.
The pre-tip section is fascinating because right art isn't about hoarding painted trash in a 35-foot mobile home forever. It is fundamentally about circulation.
The site defines pre-tips as tagged appreciation, money or tips that we hold and share and pass forward and use and need.
Gratitude and support held in circulation and anticipation.
To understand the mechanism of pre-tips, we really have to look at the sociological context Lou provides.
Right. The notes explicitly state that pre-tips exist mostly in response to the disappearance of physical cash.
And the loss of the small moments of connection that used to travel hand over hand between people.
Think about the frictionless reality of a cashless society. It is the ultimate UX achievement.
It really is.
You walk into a coffee shop, you hold your phone near a glass screen, the machine emits a sterile little beep, and the transaction is complete. You don't make eye contact.
You don't hand a barista a crumpled dollar bill. You don't brush fingers.
The physical, micro-friction of human exchange has been completely optimized out of existence.
And with the removal of that physical friction, we lost an entire layer of ambient human connection. Lou recognized that the shift to digital wallets created an emotional deficit in our daily environments.
So they designed pre-tips as an artificial injection of serendipity to counter the sterility of the digital world.
The exact protocol for deploying a pre-tip is written out in the source text, and it reads almost like a sequence for casting a spell. Let's walk through the exact steps.
Step 1 is boom/spark. An artist, a person, or a place leaves a mark. It is the initial creation of the energy.
Step 2 is mark/tag. You mark your love, you physically tag the spark onto an object.
Step 3 is fesi/pop, the bubble, the build. You let the feeling of the created object sit and build internal energy.
Step 4 is the crucial action. Drop/ship, the tip, the moment, the need, you let it go into the world.
And the final step is look/loop. The love continues somewhere, someone else.
Now, if I'm listening to this, a very cynical part of my brain is asking a question.
What's the question?
Is this just a glorified, highly intellectualized version of geocaching? Is Lou just painting a rock and hiding it under a park bench for someone to find and calling it an economic revolution?
The distinction lies in the intended value. Geocaching is a game of hide and seek. The value is in the hunt. Pre-tips is an intentional subversion of economics.
Okay, how so?
The value is in the emotional resonance of the discovery. Look at the strict rules Lou outlines for deploying these assets. They emphasize, respect the local lore.
They mandate using temporary ink or removable tags to respect the peace, respect the people, respect the laws.
They aren't vandalizing a city, they are making highly considered deposits into a localized emotional bank account.
Exactly. The text explicitly says, not every pre-tip needs to be found. Not every story needs proof.
In a global economy where every single transaction is digitized, tracked, scraped for data, and logged on a corporate ledger, pre-tips creates an untrackable shadow economy.
It is cash in motion, but the currency is entirely human connection.
You are placing future gratitude into the physical world, anticipating that a stranger will stumble upon it at the exact moment their nervous system needs to know they are not alone.
It is designing serendipity.
It's breathtaking when you step back and look at the entire machinery. We have the Lab, where the internal theory of recovery design is processed with the help of Silicon Lab hands, acting as the external executive function.
We have Play, where Reinhardt takes the discarded trash of society and transforms it into physical evidence of survival, rebuilding agency.
And we have Pre-tips, which takes that recovered energy and circulates it back into the cashless, disconnected world.
And all of these individual protocols snap together to form the total overarching architecture of Lou's existence. The text refers to this total operating system as the FIS system.
The source defines the FIS system simply as protocols plus processes plus cognitions plus loop systems. It is the operating manual for a recovered life.
And the core algorithm, the code that runs the entire machine, is stated right up front. Look, tag, ship, break, loop, repeat.
To understand how this loop sustains itself, we need to look at the two final overarching categories in the source material: life and work.
They represent the two halves of the human experience.
The text defines work as CREAM, public-facing hustle stuff. This is the external momentum.
This is where the Reinhardt auction art space lives. It is the interaction with the capitalist reality we all still have to survive in.
But then there is life. The definition here is profoundly simple. Personal POV stuff. Living, laughing, loving, life plus death plus Luda-Fizz.
This is the internal ecosystem.
And within the life section, the source text provides us with a look at a categorization system called #SayKobeIO, which catalogs sayings of things said.
There are heavy emotional subcategories like, say, art, say, WRK, say, IRL, and say, CRY, but the one specific example the source gives us to analyze falls under the category, say, SUN.
This single entry might be the most important piece of data in the entire Fizz story project, precisely because of how jarring it is.
It really is unexpected. Amidst all of this incredibly dense, profound architecture detailing trauma recovery, the breakdown of executive function, UX methodology, and shadow economies of gratitude, there is a data point logged on 2026-06-03.
It is a quote pulled from a kid's joke book, 2009.
And the quote reads, "Little Bo Peep has lost all her sheep, which is why she's down at the job center this morning."
And Lou has meticulously tagged it as SUNDEL.
Why do you think a systems designer building an architecture for survival includes a terrible children's joke from 2009?
Because if the system can't handle a terrible joke, it's not a human system. It proves the fundamental thesis.
A system built by a machine only understands efficiency.
But recovery isn't this somber, clinical, sterile process that happens in a white, windowless room with a ticking clock.
Yeah.
It involves grocery shopping and stubbing your toe and remembering a stupid joke you heard 15 years ago.
If the architecture of your recovery is so fragile and so rigidly serious that a moment of pure, ridiculous levity shatters it, then you haven't built a recovery.
You have just built a different kind of prison.
The system must be robust enough to hold the heavy, traumatic IP of the Beta KB Watts and elastic enough to catalog a joke about little Bo Peep at the unemployment office.
That is what makes it, as the manifesto says, messy, bold, human.
And that elasticity brings us to the most vital word in the entire Fizz system algorithm. Look. Tag, ship, break, loop, repeat.
Let's focus on the word break.
In the corporate tech world Lou came from, at IBM or Waymo, a break is the ultimate failure.
A break is what you are paid a six-figure salary to prevent. If the autonomous car algorithm breaks, the vehicle crashes and people die. A break is catastrophic.
But look at where break is positioned in Lou's algorithm. It is not the end of the line.
In recovery design, the break is not a failure. It is an acknowledged, mathematically expected, and entirely necessary feature of the human operating system.
You look at the world, you tag the data, you ship the art or the emotion, and then you break.
You run out of energy. You hit a wall, you have a panic attack, the trauma catches up to you for an afternoon.
The genius is that the break is the step immediately preceding the OOP. In corporate UX, a crash requires a total system reboot and an investigation.
But in the Fizz system, you break, you acknowledge the break, and then the algorithm simply loops back to the beginning. You start again at look.
It neutralizes the terror of the collapse. By building the crash into the daily schedule, by accepting that healing is fundamentally nonlinear, the panic of the breakdown loses its power.
The system catches you.
We have tracked a truly extraordinary timeline today. We started with a UX designer sitting in the Arizona desert, testing the most advanced autonomous machines on the planet, attempting to optimize human error out of existence.
We followed the collapse of that paradigm through a period of profound personal upheaval, where the systems built for corporate profit could no longer sustain a human mind in crisis.
And out of that friction, we witnessed the birth of Fizz Story EXP. We decoded the architecture of recovery design.
A framework where the rigid tools of corporate optimization were inverted to build a survival craft, where artificial intelligence was stripped of its predictive authority and relegated to being a digital filing cabinet.
Ensuring the human remained the sole meaning maker.
We saw how discarded plastic packaging and scuffed work boots were elevated into high-value utilitarian artifacts, proving through exact timestamps and data logs that a person survived the day.
And we explored how the cold, frictionless reality of a cashless society was countered by a shadow economy of pre-tips, injecting serendipity and future gratitude back into the physical world.
It is an absolute masterclass in taking the detritus of a broken life and engineering it into a flawless, messy, beautiful machinery of survival. Which leaves me with a thought I want you to carry with you after this deep dive ends.
What's the thought?
We spend so much of our daily energy trying to optimize our existence. We download the productivity apps, we time block our calendars, we try to smooth out all the friction so we can operate as seamlessly and autonomously as those self-driving cars.
We are terrified of the moment we might break.
Exactly.
Mm.
But what if the very things you are trying to optimize away, the messiness, the miscommunications, the discarded emotional moments, the friction, are actually the raw materials of your humanity?
Wow.
What if your greatest breakthroughs are hiding directly inside your breakdowns? Look around your physical space today. What is your personal retard? What are the messy, unpolished, discarded parts of your routine that you've been trying to hide from the world that might actually be the exact material you need to build the architecture of your own recovery?
That is a powerful question to end on.
Keep your eyes open for the spark. Maybe leave a pre-tip for a stranger today, just a quiet act of future gratitude waiting for the right nervous system to find it. Because the machine of life might break, the diagnosis might be murky, but the algorithm continues. Look, tag, ship, break.
Loop. Stay messy, bold, and human.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.